In this video, what I found the most annoying when training interns. Right, number one, and that's treating the internship as a job. So some really felt comfortable so quickly in the internship role that it really became almost like a permanent staff kind of role. I've been there for 10 years, right? And with that came this kind of, what falls out? Well, a kind of, it's not a learning experience. I'm going in, I'm there for X amount of hours, and I'm doing what I'm told to do. And that's annoying because this is a learning experience. They're there to not only understand more, to grow, to help the company, to show how valuable they can be. It's to become valuable, really. It's to become valuable. It's applying knowledge that you have, perhaps in theory, or things that you've learned at home or in a different setting, right? An informal setting, and actually doing it on a job. This is a very, very important stage. This is a stage that is more important than many other stages because it's your entry point. Your entry point is vital to you adopting your career. It's vital for you to understand where you want to go, how much knowledge you can gain on the job. It's like pushing yourself, like passion. So my most annoying has been those interns that come in and treat it like a job. They don't treat it like a learning experience. They don't treat it as something that they need to push themselves with and something they need drive. And it becomes a permanent position, and therefore it becomes all on me to train, and their learning becomes on the job. In other words, during the hours, not after hours. They don't exert themselves in any way. That, for a number of interns, was the absolute most annoying. Number two, saying they understood something when it was very clear that they didn't, and also that later on becomes apparent that they didn't. And that's kind of annoying because you commit your time. I've got clients to see, I've got project plans to talk about, I've got traveling, I've got all these things I've got to do. I've got to do requirements, I've got to do contracts, I've got to write code myself, I've got to test other people's code as well. There's so many things that I would do that when I commit a day of training or half a morning or whatever to training, and I did a lot of that, often repeating again and again something that was so vital to a few tasks that were coming up, and people would say they understood it, they would get going, and that disappointment of 2 weeks later, they would not have, they didn't achieve it because they didn't really understand the thing, but they would say they understand. And in some cases it was easy to sort of overlook because, they tried and all of those sort of things, but there were a few interns that really didn't feel like they tried that hard. So you would introduce a concept, they would take that concept, they would say they know it, and if you didn't understand as much, you could ask questions. I'm very open, I would answer anything right there and then. I've got the time. I've marked this time. So therefore, if it extends by an hour or so, it's no problem, and they knew that. But also, there's the internet, right? You can go on YouTube and you can take the key words that I've expressed and go and watch some videos, and you can come back the next day with even more knowledge and ask questions. When that's not done, and the tasks do not get done because of the lack of understanding, that classifies as my number two most annoying things. Right, which leads me into the next one, and that's not asking questions, but not so much to me necessarily at a moment of training, but generally speaking. So you're coding something, something's failing, there's an error message, you're Googling it, you're going on Stack Overflow, you're not finding it. You've got 3 people sitting this side, 5 people sitting this side. You could ask anyone. There's somebody who's 2 years ahead of you, somebody who's 5 years ahead of you. You don't ask, you don't inquire. Maybe you're nervous, maybe you're embarrassed, maybe you just want to learn by yourself, whatever the motivation is. I had a rule eventually which said, if you try for 20 minutes by yourself and get nowhere, absolutely nowhere, ask somebody here to give you a hint, and I made sure that everyone else would not say, here's the answer, or I'll do it for you, but it was more a hint. Oh, it's something like this, and then they would go off in the right direction. And then within 2 hours, if they still cannot come right, that they would then ask somebody to explain something to them that they're missing to help them solve that problem, or they can come to me. And the reason why it was 20 minutes and 2 hours was because I do feel it's necessary for somebody to be awkward and try and bash their head against the wall a bit. I think that's necessary to overcoming, and you need to build up your stamina and discipline. But on the other hand, if you are sitting with a particular problem that's not moving forward, you can also get disillusioned, but also you're not really outputting anything. You're not helping the team. You're not helping yourself. You're stagnating. You're reading up things that don't matter. You don't know. You can't connect the two things. This way of doing it, that 20-minute, 2-hour thing, meant that you're struggling, but then you're prompted. You're struggling, but then you're resolved. And that gives you a nice time frame to be able to get involved. And that is my number 3 most annoying thing, is when people went against that advice and would sit for days and days just doing, or thinking that they're doing or trying to do something, researching the thing, but not moving anywhere, despite knowing the rule, despite understanding what that rule was about, would still go ahead and do that and sit. Tasks would become late, things would be behind, and it didn't need to be. Their learning was also impeded by this lack of judgment, right, or not following this rule. This rule was placed there purely for their benefit. I wouldn't obviously mind if it was 30 minutes or 4 hours. That's not the problem. What annoyed me was when it was days and it was not resolved. Number 4. This is annoying because you put so much effort into someone. I would spend hours and hours explaining the same thing again and again and going through it with different directions sometimes. Sometimes it was easy, sometimes it was quite difficult. Coding, pair programming with an intern, mobbing with people, with all the interns, doing Scrum meetings, which I didn't enjoy, just for their benefit, to see if they can come in and learn more and get some knowledge. You try your very best to get them involved and learn. And when the ones that truly did adopt, right, they did the 20-minute rule, they learned, they understood, they went home, they did more. It's kind of narcissistic of me in a way to say this, but I didn't like the disloyalty. So in a sense, you invest so much time, 6 months, 8 months, a year of your time every other day in that person, sculpting them, getting them to understand different things, giving them things that they can learn at home, like just guiding them. And then they'll hit you one day with, oh, here's my 1 week's notice. It was a week's notice. Here's 1 week's notice. I'm leaving. It's like, okay, why? Why are you leaving? You're still learning, you're doing well, but you still need a way to go. And it would be, well, the money's better. And, the money sometimes is negligible to the right environment. And, if there was a failure on my part, maybe it wasn't to create that environment where that money was there for them. So not to say that they didn't earn, but it's definitely not as much as the larger companies were offering, which falls part of my next negative, which I'll get into. But really, that sort of, disloyalty of, why couldn't you tell me a month before? It's a week by company policy, but you could have given me a heads up. You could have asked for a little bit more money. You could have explained why you would go. That little bit of disloyalty there, and I understand how the world works. Everyone's got things to pay and things to look after, but as far as I was concerned, and vast majority of my interns would repeat again and again to others, is that the environment was spectacular in terms of learning, culture, understanding, nurturing, fostering, all of that kind of stuff, good projects. So it wasn't an environment problem, it was purely financial. And I think that that's a little bit short-sighted sometimes. Sometimes you need to commit yourself for longer periods in the trenches to understand more and build your knowledge. That's not to say you should live poor for a long time or anything like that, but it's just the case of if you have a good environment and your knowledge is being multiplied, that is a very good basis to stay in an environment. And I don't feel that a lot of people pay much attention to that, especially the young interns that were there who were only thinking finance. And that there were some that were much more loyal than others, some that did consult with me and move on, but quite a lot would immediately, as soon as an offer came in, would leave. Which brings me to the final negative, and that is, as a small software house, you have a salary range that you can afford, and the projects that come in are a certain caliber of project, a certain budget size. And so you have to be very careful what you do and who you hire. You're still looking for good talent and you're still looking for good people, but you've got to accept that there's certain limitations with that caliber of person because of the price range and so on. This leads into the previous ones that I've discussed. The salaries were decent by standards that were set by a medium-sized business. But what was happening, and this is the negative, larger companies doing internships would pay their interns 3-4 times the amount that any small software house or medium-sized software house could afford. And the projects were absolutely overpriced, and they would earn their massive profits, and therefore they can pay very well. But not all of those interns ended up with jobs in those larger businesses. So therefore they were ruined for the industry, right? So you're earning a large salary, you're an intern, you're learning, it was very nice, but you didn't cut it or whatever reason. You're now not going to be there any longer. You're looking for a job, and all the jobs are a third or a fourth lower than what you've been accustomed to for the last year. And that's a huge problem. I couldn't get people, even though the experience wasn't as great in those larger companies. They're often left to their own devices, right? It depends on the company. A lot are left to their own and placed on a project and must just struggle through it. And they paid, so that's our duty to you. Gone. The duty that I placed on my interns was vast and extremely educational. Way superior in knowledge that they would gain on that job. The deficit was the salary is less. So it's a kind of a circular problem where interns can go into a larger business, get paid a whole lot more, and then ruined. And on the other hand, they're seeking the larger to go in. And I did have an intern who left me, who went into a larger business, who then came back and said, "Can I get a job?" Right? I didn't have any places at the time, so I couldn't. But the point is, I can't up the salary just because a large company can. And those are my top 5 most annoying things about teaching and working with interns in my software business. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you'd like to be alerted of more videos. Thank you for watching.